We should start now that this is being recorded. My name is Ed Sokolowski. I'm the Executive Director of BIST, Bureau of Information and Technology. I will be looking at the chats today and be trying to answer your questions, and I'll help Nicole if there's any questions that are coming up through the chats. Nicole?
Hi, I'm Nicole Boone. I am the business analyst on Checkbook, and we're just going to do an overview today of the spending and contracts area. We're doing a general overview, but we're going to really focus on spending and contracts because that's really where the most inquiries are and the most interest. Can everybody see my screen? We can see the shared screen? Okay. So when you enter the Checkbook NYC site, you'll automatically be taken to the spending domain at the citywide level. You know that you're at the spending domain because that box is lit up and the arrow is pointing down. And I always check my breadcrumbs to know exactly where I am in Checkbook, because once you get into it, it can get easy to get lost. So as we enter the site, the first thing you see as you come down here we have these year-to-year graphic representations. So you can see that if you hover over the bars, you can see the information on the year-to-year comparison. And then we've got top 10 agencies by disbursement amount graph. Hovering over shows you the information. Then we have top 10 contracts by disbursement amount, and you can see the contract ID, the amount, the prime vendor, and the agency. And then we've got our top 10 prime vendors by disbursement amount. With these visualizations, you can click on grid view to get the underlying data for that graphic representation. And then, so above here in our top bar, we have the overall amount of spending for the fiscal year to date. And then this lower bar separates out that spending into payroll spending, capital spending, contract spending, trust and agency, and other spending. And then that all adds up to the total spending number above. I'm going to take a look down here at our widgets. We've got top 5 contracts, top 5 agencies by spending, top 5 expense categories, top 5 prime vendors, top 5 contracts, MOX registered COVID-19 contract spending, and top 5 agencies by payroll spending. If you want to go beyond just seeing the top 5 results, you can hit the plus button here, and the entire widget will expand to show you the top 150 results. Just going to scroll down. So say you want to look a little bit deeper into the data, you can go to the details link, and then everything will be represented in a narrowed down faceted search so that you can then take the information that you have out of that widget and maybe narrow it down by, say, we're looking at all spending for the city. So maybe I just want to see spending for the Department of Education. I can click on Department of Education and narrow down my results to just the Department of Education. Maybe I know exactly what vendor from the Department of Education I want to look at. So I can look through this list of vendors, or I could start typing in a vendor and find the results. So I didn't know which bus company I wanted to look at. I just put in the word bus and hit search, and now I can see results for all the different bus companies with Department of Education. I'm just going to pick one. It's going to narrow down my results even further. And then when I have exactly the spreadsheet I'm looking for, the information that I would like, I can hit export. And then I can export my data into an Excel spreadsheet. So let's go back to the spending home page.
If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop it into the chat and we'll keep
Yes.
an eye on it, okay?
So something that we try to do with Checkbook to make sure that you stay where you were meant to be is we try to keep you in the domain that you're in, that you're working in. So if you're looking at spending information, and then say we go down to the top 5 contracts and you end up clicking on this contract, you'll be taken to a pop-out page. This way, you can look at that contract information without losing your place in the spending domain. Great. So let's take a quick look over at contracts. So it's the same basic page we start with our graphic representations here. And again, hovering over your graph gives you the information. We've got spending by expense contracts, top 10 agencies by active expense contracts, top 10 active expense contracts by current amount, and then top 10 prime vendors by active expense contract. So then we're going to come down here to the bottom dashboard where you have your overall registered contract amount to date is 7.5 billion. And down here that's split into active expense contracts, registered expense contracts, active revenue contracts, registered revenue contracts, pending expense contracts, and pending revenue contracts. The difference between an active expense contract and a registered contract was registered in this fiscal year. An active expense contract is any contract whose period of performance is prior to this date and goes is prior to this fiscal year, and it was registered prior to this fiscal year, or could be registered this fiscal year and goes beyond this date. So for instance, our registered contracts are a subset of our active expense contracts. Did I confuse anyone there? Does anyone have any questions about that difference?
We do have another question.
Okay.
Nicole, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, the question is how long contracts stay in Checkbook and are they archived? So I believe, go ahead, you can answer.
Yeah, so we have contracts in Checkbook going back to when FMS 3 started up. So FMS 3 is the financial management system for the city. And when we started Checkbook, we basically started with all contracts that were currently in FMS 3. So it goes back quite a while, and we archive all of our information. You can see the history on every contract, and we're gonna get into that.
So that's what, 2010, right?
Yes.
All right. And once it's in Checkbook, they don't disappear. I think that's where they were going with that question.
Correct. Once they're in Checkbook, they stay in Checkbook. You can find the whole history of the contract. Okay. So there's a different, there are a few ways to look at this. So let's first look at the widgets. We've got our
one more question.
Sure.
Sorry.
Yeah.
What's revenue contract in general? So I guess the question is a revenue contract that was shown on the screen.
Oh, so basically a revenue contract is any contract in which the city is making money rather than spending money. It's really that simple. So it could be street vendors, it could be any income to the city is a revenue contract. Does that answer the entire question?
I think it does. Go ahead.
Okay. And then just really quickly to touch on pending contracts. Pending contracts are contracts that have not been registered yet. So they've got a 30-day window to either go through the process and be registered, or drop out of the process and have to go back through it, or, just drop out completely. So just so you know that anything that's in the pending area, it's got a 30-day window to be in the pending area. Once it gets registered, it falls out of Checkbook for about 24 to 48 hours, and then it comes back under the registered contract area.
Are grants considered revenue contracts, I guess is the question. I think grants are probably more towards funds that fall into the general fund to be used.
I'm not, I could check on that and get back to you on an answer for that.
Okay.
Okay. So let's take a look at our widgets. We've got our top 5 master agreements. Then we have our top 5 master agreement modifications. I love the modifications widget because it's a really quick look at a contract to see where it started, what the original amount was, what the current amount is, what the spent of date, and then to see the dollar difference between where we started and where we are now. And then we also give a % difference. And so it's a sort of an easy check to make sure there are valid reasons why contracts go up 100%, but there are other reasons why it may be a contract that's just sort of ballooning out of control, and it might be a first warning that a contract needs a little bit more to look at. So I like that idea. Again, we've got the plus to expand your results and the details to take you to a narrow down faceted search. Then we've got our top 5 contracts, top 5 contract modifications. We have our MOX registered COVID contracts, top prime vendors, top 5 award methods, top 5 agencies, contracts by industry, and then contracts by size. So let's sort of dive off from here and say that we just want to look at a contract. We want to look at all the contracts for, say, the Department of Education. So I can just come down here to our top 5 contracts and click Department of Education. The entire page is going to refresh to show all of these widgets, everything for the Department of Education. I'm not clicking on it yet because there's another way to do this as well. I can either come down here to the widget, see which agencies I want to click on and do it that way, or I can go to the very top of my page and then I can go to Citywide Agencies tab. And then I can just scroll over to the Department and go to my citywide agencies. I can scroll over to the Department of Education. I can click on it. And again, my entire page is going to refresh to show now all of the registered contracts. We have 831.4 million for the Department of Education. All of these graphic representations are also for the Department of Education. And all of the widgets are now reflecting Department of Education. So let's say we want to go deeper. We want to know about a specific vendor for the Department of Education. So let's click on Little Richie Bus Service. So the way that Checkbook works, we go from citywide, we go to the agency level, and then we can go down to the vendor level. So again, we're looking at Little Richie. Now it's all of Little Richie's contracts with the Department of Education for the fiscal year indicated. So they have no registered contracts for this year, but we will see that they do have 2 active contracts worth $1 billion. Now, I may want to look deeper at one of these contracts. So I'm just going to click on the contract I want to look at. And we get taken to a contract history ID page. Let's give it a moment to refresh. So I scroll down here. This is our contract. We can see how many associated contracts there are. We can see the contract current amount, the original amount, and the spent to date. We can see all of the general information for the vendor and information about like how many solicitations were there on this contract, which version of the contract are we on. We see the prime vendor information, and then we can see if they have any sub-vendor information. In this situation, they do not. Then as we go down, we can look at the contract history. I can see, so we start with the latest version number. So we're at version number 7. We can see what the current amount was, what the original amount was, how much it's increased or decreased. Now, every line, every difference that happens on a contract isn't always a monetary one. So like you can just see on this whether a contract went up or down, but there may have been some other change that happened and transpired. And so you might not see a monetary change from one version to another. That means that some other change took place on the contract in that time. We can come down here and look at all of the spending by the prime vendor. And we can expand the windows to look at the different version numbers for the different years. And then we can look at the actual transactions. So these are the associated, those 61 associated contracts to this master agreement. This is the spending on each of them. Okay.
All right, so let's stop there. Let's stop
Yeah.
there for a second. Go back by Subvendor. Scroll down to Subvendor for a second, all right? Please.
Oh, there are no sub-vendors on this
On
contract.
this one? Oh, okay, fine. All right, we'll leave it right there for a second. All
Okay.
right, so the first question that we have is, do you have contractors assisting in the collection process for all the collections that are done by the city? So everything you're looking here, except for sub-vendor data, which is put in the prime, exists in our FMS system, in our financial management system. So all the prime vendors, all the contracts, all the spending, everything is coming from our FMS system into Checkbook. When there is sub-vendor data, it's coming through PIP, which is another application that's hooked into the FMS. So in that application, the prime vendor will record who the sub-vendors are and payments to their sub-vendors. That was question one. Okay, and then Nicole, at some point, I know you're going to show question two. When payments are made, can you determine in Checkbook where the funds come from? Capital, city funds, etc. But I know you can show that later on. We'll just that's a question that you can answer.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so let's go back to home really quickly. I want to go over these two feature dashboards, the spending feature dashboard and the contracts feature dashboard. Notice while spending is lit up, this says spending feature dashboard. If I clicked on contracts, it would switch over to a contracts feature dashboard and the numbers would change for contracts. We're going to go back to spending. So these dashboards work in conjunction. They are a subset of the overall spending number for monies that have gone to minority vendors and monies that have gone to sub vendors. So when we're looking at it this way at the spending feature dashboard, we see that there's 760.7 million going to MWBEs. And there's 94.5 million going to sub vendors in general. But if I were to click on the MWBE dashboard, it'll light up. The little arrow will come here. So you know that you're on the MWBE side. So that 760.7 million is not going to change, but the sub vendor data does change because now the sub vendor box is only showing MWBE sub vendors. And so that 95 million of overall spending that's gone to sub vendors is now down to 40.9 million of those sub vendors that are MWBE. We have graph visualizations to show you the MWBE share versus non-MWBE payments. We have MWB total prime spending shares year by year and the numbers going up. Then we break it out by ethnicity in this graph. Top 10 agencies by MWB spending. Top 10 prime vendors by MWB spending. Top 10 contracts by MWB spending. And then top 10 sub vendors by MWB spending. If we scroll down, you'll see that our widgets are now updated for MWBEs. So we have the MWB category here for each. You can see the spending, you can see their share, their MWB spending share for top 5 prime vendors, top 5 sub vendors, top 5 contracts, and then spending by industry. So let's take a look at spending. Well, let's wait for a second. So now I'm going to click on the sub vendor the MWBE dashboard. So now everything is going to refresh for sub vendors. This is the MWB share by sub vendor. We see our top agencies by sub vendor spending, and this is nice because you see just off the top exactly how many sub vendors each agency is using. how much spending is going, the percent that's paid to sub-vendors, and then the year-to-date spending. We can see our top 5 subs. We can click that open to see our top 150. And again, we can go to the details link and see our narrowed down faceted search page if we want to dive deeper or do a little data mining there. And then we've got our top 5 subcontracts down below. So on the contract side, this looks slightly different, but very much the same. So when we're on our contract side, we know we're in the contracts because it's blue and the arrow is on it. Now the overall MWBE registered contract amount is 546.5 million. And there's an overall registered contract amount for sub-vendors of 59.5 million. Once I click on that, now the sub-vendors are only representing MWB sub-vendor contracts. So we're dropping down to 27.1 million. We have our visualizations. And then down below, we can look at everything based on there's the prime and the sub. So this will say, does this contract include sub-vendors? Yes, I can take a look at that, either by looking at the contract or looking at the spent to date. I can go to details to look at a much larger set of data and narrow it down. We've got top 5 contract amount modifications, top 5 prime vendors, top 5 subs, top 5 award methods, top 5 agencies, contracts by industry, and contracts by size. Question? I feel like there's maybe a pause. No, we're good?
Yeah, I have one. There's one question.
Okay.
I'm assuming it's related to the MWB vendors. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. The question is, have all of these vendors gone through the competitive bidding process? Are you speaking specifically of MWBE vendors? So we're waiting for the response to come in. Okay. But I mean, I'm just in general, all asking about all, okay, not MWB specifically. Yes, I mean, the procurement rules of the city are very vast, and they have as many ways for vendors to go to have competition. I mean, so I would say majority of the cases there are competitive bidding that goes on. That we have to take so many X amount of vendors and can do the comparisons and look at scope and see what how to compete and have the competitive process. There are exceptions where a particular vendor may be sole source, but they're kind of far and few between. So the general answer is yes. Everybody has to go through a competitive bidding process, and all the vendors have to be registered in the passport application. All the vendors have to be vetted to make sure they're legit, and good history, and things like that. Okay, another question: Why are there having huge differences between the original contract amount and the revised amount? What normally inform these changes? Nicole, you want to take a crack at that?
Sure. I mean, it depends on the contract, of course, but for some of these, especially like when we're looking at like busing contracts that usually get renewed or revised over a long period of time, over like 20 years. When that contract started, it was probably a 5-year contract, and then it got revised and they added, the end date. They put it out till 10 years. They added that amount of money, then they put it out another 5 years, and they got, like it's just revising the contract for new needs. And, during COVID, I'm sure that there were a lot of new needs for some of these contracts, especially when it came to moving people around, that sort of thing. It really depends on the contract, but those are some reasons that you would see a contract go up over time. Ed, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, the only thing I would add too, sometimes in order to start a procurement process, you'll find contracts that have a dollar value of a single dollar, right? And then that kind of kicks the process off. But then later on, they actually put the but the original contract value gets put out there. So you'll see a big difference from $1 to 20 million. Right, so it's just the kind of way the city processes the contracts and money. All right, we got a couple other questions here.
Yep.
So let's see what we got here. Why are MWBEs listed, but then women, non-minority shown separately? W stands for women-owned business. Okay, women-owned business or white women-owned business. Okay, so that's what that. So when you see women, it's white women. There's another certification that where we actually say it's an Asian woman or a Black woman or Hispanic woman. So that's a certification within it. So that's why we break things up differently. Are the copies of the actual contracts available on Checkbook? Unfortunately, the answer is no. We're not able to do that. There's no way for us to pull apart the contract PDF documents to show terms of the contract without showing other things that may not be available for the public to see. I know there's discussion going on within the city to maybe change some of those rules, but right now we have to stick to no, we can't show anything. Is Checkbook source open source? Is it available on GitHub? Yes, it is. The Checkbook is available on GitHub, and people can actually pull it down. Take a look at the code if you so desire. I think there was one company in Texas that actually
Williamson County, Texas.
There you go. He actually
Used
reversed
to get-
engineered, and they used they put spending and contracts, I believe. Right. Yes. Okay.
So you've seen what the functionality for both spending and contracts is. Now I just want to show some alternate routes of finding information. First, we have our smart search bar up here at the top of the page. If I start typing in a vendor, or it'll automatically pre-fill up. So I can choose my vendor, hit search, and then it's giving me all data. It's giving me both contracts and spending in one place. And so this is like one place where if you are doing a broad search, you're not sure exactly what you're looking for, this is a great, smart search is a great way to do it because you get all the results and then you can start to narrow down what you think you might want. So I'm going to look at spending data. And then I'm going to export my data into a CSV file. So I'm just going to download my results. Now, we can only give you back up to 200,000 rows of results through our exports. So when we need more results than that, I'm going to show you that in a little bit. So I'm going to download my data into into Excel file. And I think this will touch on the prior question. So you can see that we show agency, department, we show the expense category, the spending category, the payee name, whether there's their sub-vendor. If there's an associated prime vendor, you'd have that there. The MWB category, whether it's a women-owned business, whether it's an emerging business, the contract ID, the check amount, the issue date. And then we recently added the budget code. So this is really nice because by using the budget code on each of these expense lines, we can now go back and trace this into the budget domain, which we didn't have the ability to do before. So this is really quite helpful. And I think this touches on the question that was out there earlier about where the funding was coming from. You can see the budget code for each expenditure. So I'm just going to click out of that. Great. And so that's smart search. If I want to, if I know exactly what I'm looking for, I can go up into advanced search. Give it a second to load. So in advanced search, let's say I want to see all of the contracts for the Office of the Controller, and I only want to see it for this fiscal year. And yeah, let's say, and I actually only want to see the spending on COVID. make it more specific. There are no spending transactions for 2023 for COVID for the controller's office. Question asked, question answered. As we have more catastrophic events, we will add more tabs into the advanced search bar. Right now, all we have for catastrophic events is COVID-19. You can select down by a specific MWB category. You can choose whether you want payroll spending, capital contracts, trust and agency. So this is a really nice way to narrow down your results. If you already know some information about what you're looking for, this is a great way to access it. You can just click on another tab to come up with the contracts. Advanced search. Advanced search and contracts also has this purpose line. The purpose line is a free form field that people fill in. But say I really don't know what I'm looking for, but I think the city is doing work with asbestos. So am I spelling that correctly? I'm probably not. I should try a word I can spell. Let's just do doors. So any contract that has doors in the purpose line, all I have to do is hit submit, and I will get all work related to doors in the city, and then I can narrow down my results from there. I find that the purpose line is a really great place to start with advanced search. Often when you know that there are certain programs out there or certain things that you want to know more about, but you're not really sure what it's called or how to find it, the purpose line can be really helpful for sort of data diving. And let's see how many results we got for doors.
Probably tons.
Yeah, probably a million because it's really wide search.
There you go.
Oh, it's not that bad. We got 310 for all years.
Oh yes, 310.
That's not bad. And so again, I can export this into an Excel file and then play with my results. Now, let's say that we're looking for something that has a way larger result than 310. Like we have over 200,000 results. That's when we go to data feeds. So if we come up to the top of the screen, you can see this, click on data feeds. I can choose spending or contracts. I'm going to choose spending, hit next. Here I can choose whose contracts I want to look at. I'm just going to say, let's say Office of the Controller again. I'm going to say all years because I'm going to assume that's a lot of contracts. And then I can literally choose exactly which columns I want to see in my extract, but I'm just going to add them all and click submit. So when I get a result that's extremely large and the system has to work on it behind the scenes, they'll ask me to, also this wasn't above 250, it's okay. They will ask me at this point to put in my email address. I will give them my email address. They will send me a tracking number. And when the results are ready, I'll get an email, your results are ready. I just pop that tracking number in here, hit go, and then it'll pull up my files. This is an old request, so it's not pulling up my files. Does anybody have any questions about data feeds?
Do the door search again.
Do the what?
Do the search for doors. Do it one more time.
Sure. So we're going to advanced search. I'm going to go to contracts. That's where we have that purpose field. We can do doors. We can do pizza. I'm going to hit submit. And then any contract with the city that has the word pizza or is associated with pizza, that will come up in my results. I feel like pizza is probably going to be a slightly larger result pool.
Yeah, DOE loves that pizza. All right, and then we do have another question. Just go back in the data feed again. Just go repeat that one more time.
Okay,
When this is done.
Yeah, it won't interrupt, unfortunately. There we go. 3 items. That's crazy.
Huh.
So you can see we've got who the vendor is, purpose, pizza, how much was spent, when it was spent, who and which agency, etc. So I'm sorry, you want to go back up to data feeds at this point?
Yes, do that search one more time.
Okay, so I'm choosing to do a spending search. I'm going to hit next. I'll do a real big one this time. I'll just do all spending citywide, all years. So I can choose up at this top, you know, what I want to do. I can narrow it down if I'd like to. I'm going to keep it as it is. I'm choosing to use, sorry.
Yeah, just do 1 year. But even if you hit 20 or 22.
Well, what I would like is to get over 200,000 results.
Yeah, if you do 1 year for the entire city, you should get it.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so we'll do 22.
Yeah, do it 22.
I'm going to add all columns and I'm going to hit submit.
And the question is how it's delivered. So this is the steps now that.
Right. Okay. So we have over 3 million transactions. So I'm going to add my email address. I'm going to hit confirm. And now it says, thank you. You'll receive an email with the tracking number. I'll get my tracking number. And when my data is ready, they'll send me another email saying your data's ready. And I'll just take my tracking number, put it over here, hit go, and it'll pull up all the files that of the data I need.
Okay, so let me backtrack a second. We have some questions I skipped over. So question one, how do we get a copy of a contract? So to get a copy of a contract, you can use Checkbook as a reference point, and you can find the contracting agency that's within the contract domain. But sometimes you have a contracting agency and have a paying agency. So you want to make sure you get the contracting agency, and that particular agency, you should submit a FOIL request to that agency to get a copy of the contracts. Next question, what is the process for getting Checkbook for another city? Okay, basically we leave it open for individual entities, city and government to go out into the GitHub repository and find Checkbook. We don't necessarily have a, we can answer questions, but we don't necessarily go through coaching somebody through to how to create another version of Checkbook in another location. But what I will say though is Checkbook itself, we're doing a major upgrade to the language, the Drupal language. And one of the changes is we're making the application responsive. So this way it'll fit on an iPhone, an iPad. So if anybody's going to do any type of work and other entities and be looking at Checkbook, they really should wait until that responsive design is out there. Because right now it's private, you cannot get to that because it's being worked on. So we're thinking sometime beginning of the second quarter next year, we'll have that modification available in Checkbook. This is another one. I'll just read the question, but I'm not going to have an answer for it. Just to acknowledge that the question was submitted. Would the city offer incentives for vendors and contractors to comply with the use of electric vehicles and/or the reduction of carbon footprint, use of environmentally safe pesticides, etc.? In other words, the inclusion of such will be advantageous with the 2050 goals for the city has been talking about. Checkbook should list these qualifications prominently. That's a great question. I don't have an answer, so I will just make sure that people in our policy area actually get this question, okay? The office does have a copy of the agency contracts, but as a general policy of looking at our website, it does recommend that going to the agency that actually created the contract itself. I mean, I'll double check that, but that's what I see actually in our website. Okay, so if you're looking for they're asking me to restate about the information is needed to obtain a copy of the contract. So, for example, Nicole, let's go to contracts, and let's go find the contracts. Scroll down a little bit, go down to the CTRs. Okay, CT1. There you go. All right, so pick the third one down. There's a Department of Education. All right, in a case like this.
Do you want me to click on the?
Click on it here.
Yeah.
So in a case like this, the contracting agency is the Department of Education. So I think what you need to have then is you want to be able to take that contract number that starts with 2021, that number, okay, and that would be the identification code that the agency would actually you could use to identify a contract that you would like to foil. The digits in the front, that CT1 is the kind of contract type, and the 040 is the agency code. So that doesn't mean much to an agency. That's our kind of internal codes. Is the stuff that starts with the year.
But if you are trying to find an agency code, we do have them up here in the help section under the site navigation and glossary. You can look up all of the different agency codes for each agency in case that's information that you need. Sorry, Ed.
That's okay. That's good. Very good information. Yes, you can. So here's another question. Can you set up an alert via Grid Alert to get spending alerts? Okay, can you take us through
So
that?
next step, yep.
Yep, okay.
So Create Alert is right here next to Advanced Search. It works almost identically to Advanced Search. So we're going to come up here and click on it. Great. So maybe I want to see every new contract that comes in for the Office of the Controller. So I'm going to, and I want active contracts. So I'm going to go over to the agency. I'm going to choose Office of the Controller. And then I want new contracts. So I'm going to choose fiscal year 2023. And I'm going to hit next. Just taking a little second. Okay, here we go. So it just basically confirms that you're doing an active contracts search. There we see our results. I'm going to hit next. I'm going to name it something I can remember. I'm going to say I would like to know this daily, have it check daily for new contracts. And then let's say I'm going to make that expire at the end of the month. And then I can just schedule my alert. So now I don't have to do anything. It's going to come to me. It's going to come to my email. And it'll keep going for as long as I would like it to. Any other, so let me just really quickly, some resources here. Under the help, I did quickly show you site navigation and glossary, but let me just click on that to show you. You can get site information and glossary information on terms, on any of the things we talked about, like what is a revenue contract? What is that versus a expense contract? All of that information is right here in our glossary. Our agency codes, as I showed, are in here. And we can also, there are instructional videos. So if there's anything you've forgotten about the navigation process, you can come back here for a refresher. And we have this new feature section, which every time we add a new feature, we let you know about it by a quick check over here in this section. So you can keep up with what might have changed since the last time you were on Checkbook.
Jay, I actually copied your questions down, and I'm going to pass them on to our policy area, because I'm not sure if you're going to get the signature page. I don't know. So I will, I'll move it up the chain and see if we can get somebody to answer you back, okay?
One feature that I did not remember to show you all, which is a really important one, is the date filter here at the top of the screen. So without going to advanced search, without going to anything, you can just pull up, I want to look at fiscal year 21, and everything will refresh for fiscal year 21. So you can look at historic data in the widgets without using advanced search or data feeds.
All right, guys. Okay, so Nicole, that's kind of what you wanted to cover for now?
That concludes the basic, features of Checkbook. And if you have any more questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, so we have another question. Some city agencies such as DOB establish a pricing benchmark for certain SOBs or schedule of value items in order to facilitate purchase, compliance, and approvals, as is the case with rooftop antennas, mechanical equipment. Why the city does not adopt the same rationale with dealing with all vendors, so that there are no overpricing, fraud, injuring orders, face these issues. Thank you. Please explain. Okay, again, this is another question I don't have an answer for you. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to have somebody get back to you. Okay, thanks for hosting. Can you provide the website in the chat where we can more information about the process of obtaining a checkbook for another city? All right. I need to go to GitHub. I don't, Nicole, do you have the GitHub link handy or no?
If whoever this is, I will give you my email address. If you just email me after this, I can put you in contact with the correct people who can help you for this.
Yeah, this is Suzanne, so okay. All right, Suzanne, we'll send you the link. Any other questions, guys? Hopefully this was helpful for everybody, a basic understanding of how Checkbook works. Right, I don't see any more messages at this point.
Well, thank you all for coming today. We really enjoy teaching Checkbook, and please communicate with us if you have any questions after. I'm going to put my email address in the chat. Oh, it's already in there. Thank you.
Okay, there's one last question I'll answer. I was wondering if there's a way to extract information from Checkbook into a database. Yeah, we have,
we have APIs.
The API is set up in here, so you can
actually
do.
So we go to data feeds, that same thing for data feeds. There's a tab here for APIs. And you can just click on which area you want to do that with spending, contracts, payroll, whatever, and it'll give you the information to create your API. Thank you all so much.
Okay, thank you.